Fiber is the new healthy diet fad, or maybe it's a phenomenon. But I do know that it's here to stay. Eating foods high in fiber can improve your digestion, lower your sugar, and reduce your risk of heart disease. Fiber comes from plant-based foods, including fruits, whole grains, nuts, legumes. It's like your body's natural scrub brush passing through your colon, carrying out the bad stuff, and helping the microbiome create the good stuff. For your optimal health, you need 25 to 30 grams of fiber each day. Most Americans don't consume nearly enough fiber in our diet. In fact, most of us only get about half of what's recommended. So it's wise that you try to aim for this goal and increase the fiber in your diet. This webinar will define fiber, its recommendations, and all of the sources that you can put into your diet to help you meet this goal. First, let's talk about the simple science of fiber. Dietary fiber is just a type of carbohydrate made up of many sugar molecules linked together. But unlike the other carbohydrates, dietary fiber is bound together in a way that it cannot actually be easily digested in the small intestine. So there are actually two types of dietary fiber. The first type that I'm going to talk about is the soluble dietary fiber. It dissolves in water and it forms a thick gel-like substance in your stomach. It's broken down by bacteria in the large intestine, and it does provide some calories. It can also interfere with the absorption of dietary fat and cholesterol, and typically this is the good benefit of it. Soluble fiber has been shown in studies to lower low-density lipoprotein, also called LDL. Maybe your doctors refer to it as the bad type of cholesterol in the blood. As another, soluble fiber can also slow down the digestion and the rate at which carbohydrates are absorbed into the bloodstream. So that is how they help to lower blood sugars. Fiber is a friend to the diabetic because it helps control your post-meal blood sugars. It prevents those rapid rises following a meal with carbohydrates. Second is insoluble dietary fiber that does not dissolve in water, and it may pass through the colon relatively intact. Therefore, it's not a source of calories. It just speeds up the movement of the intestinal tract. What foods can you add to your plate to meet the recommendations of 30 grams of fiber per day? Do you already have a few in mind? Because I'm going to give you a fully comprehensive list. Not to sound too repetitive, but first I'd like to go through comprehensively the good sources of dietary fiber. For one, are beans and legumes. You can think of black beans, kidney beans, chickpea beans, white beans, northern beans, and lentils. All fruits, but especially those with edible seeds, like berries. All vegetables. Whole grains are going to include the pastas and the breads, maybe the old-fashioned steel oats, maybe some chips. Typically it has to say whole grain on it in order to actually have that kind of fiber. Many grain products now are listing double fiber, which actually have other sources of fiber added. Nuts. Nuts are also a good source. There are many types of nuts to try out and diversify in your recipes. There are peanuts, walnuts, pecans, almonds, macadamia, pistachios, sunflower seeds. So take your pick, but be careful because there's also a lot of fat and there's a lot of calories and even a small little handful. Last but not least are the packaged goods, like granola bars, protein bars, cereal bars, just to name a few. So typically you have to read the nutrition labels in order to identify the fiber content in these because it's going to be supplemental fiber. So here are a few takeaways when looking at the nutrition labels. Often, they're labeled as an excellent source, which means that they contain more than 5 grams of fiber. Foods that are listed as a good source contain at least 2.5 grams of fiber. And you're also going to look for the front of the package for whole grain. Generally, the rule is that you're going to look for fiber that is listed as 20% of the daily value per serving. Then it's higher in fiber. So the dietary fiber on a nutrition facts label includes naturally occurring fibers, such as in the plants, and there are certain isolated or synthetic non-digestible carbohydrates that were added to the food because it was determined by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration that those carbohydrates have beneficial physiological effects to the human health. So here's that list. As it has been mentioned, plant-based foods grown from the earth have good fiber in them. So increasing fibers, vegetables, beans, and nuts will increase the fiber in your diet. However, the amount of fiber can still vary among them. So here's a list of natural food items and the variability of the food content, just to give you an idea of the amount of variation there can be. The first chart is a few common fruits. Note that grapes are actually much lower than the others. The fruit with the highest fiber is actually the avocado, and it's not listed here, but that was lined out in the carbohydrate series. Vegetables and legumes are often mentioned in the same category. The legumes are notably higher, but generally the vegetables have a lot of other health benefits, and that's why they're the most recommended. Last but not least is the chart on the grains. Whole grains are the most recommended because they're the most palatable, cheap, and accessible. Recently, I'm even seeing a whole grain option on menus at restaurants. For an example, I was at a healthy, popular restaurant the other day, and it was actually $1.65 upcharge for whole grain toast instead of their regular toast. But at least it was an option. Here is a copy of the FDA recommendations on how to get fiber into your diet. I've provided this in a PDF link as well. Notice that 4 out of 7 recommendations are about adding whole grains to your diet. Because I am from the heartland of America, sometimes called the Wheatland, and my graduating college mascot was the Wheat Shocker, I would like to give some brief education on the difference between whole grains and the processed grains. By definition, grains are the seeds from certain cereal crops grown for food. Here's a list of some examples of grains. Whole grains include the entire grain seed, usually called the kernel, which consists of the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. Nothing has been added or taken away by processing. And whole grains contain dietary fiber, carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and beneficial fats. In your diet, you're going to be eating whole grains as a single food, such as rice or oatmeal or popcorn, or it's going to be an ingredient in a food item like bread or cereal, crackers, or pasta. Refined grains have been processed, also called milled, to remove the bran and the germ from the grain. This is done to give grains a finer texture, lighter color, and longer shelf life. But the processing also removes the dietary fiber, iron, B vitamins, and other nutrients. Enriched grains have key nutrients, but they were restored during the last part of the process of the refined grains. Typically, these will include iron and B vitamins. Most refined grain products in America are enriched, And often there's going to be a statement on the food package that says enriched. So an example is a product like an enriched white rice or enriched flour or enriched whole bread. The last part of this webinar is going to cover the different fiber supplements that come from a container at the store. About 30% of people with type 1 diabetes also have celiac disease. So they must rely on vegetables, nuts, seeds, and even supplements for fiber. Each fiber supplement is actually a little bit of a different type. Do you remember that long list of FDA-approved supplements from the beginning of the webinar? For one is Fiber Choice. This is inulin. Inulin is one type of prebiotic fiber, which means that it causes significant favorable changes to your colon's bacterial population. This is important because digestive bacteria play a major role in how you absorb nutrients and even produce hormones related to anxiety and appetite. Inulin, or Fiber Choice, can be found as a chewable tablet, which is actually 100% soluble fiber. And each serving is 3 grams of fiber for 2 tablets. Methylcellulose is another common soluble fiber, which is made from cellulose, an important structure in plants. It is different from psyllium because it is non-fermentable, meaning that it's less likely to contribute to bloating and gas. It's a little more commonly found on the shelves in different additives for products. It's 100% soluble fiber, and it's found in either a powder or a caplet form. The powder form is often used as a thickener or emulsifier in the cooking world because of its chemical structure. It actually can dissolve in a cold liquid, but not in hot. The fiber content of Citrusol with Smart Fiber powder is about 2 grams per rounded tablespoon. And the fiber of Citrusol caplets is 1 gram for 2 caplets. A third product is Benefiber, which is also wheat dextrin. Wheat dextrin is manufactured as a byproduct of the wheat plant. It's tasteless, and it can dissolve in either hot or cold liquids. It can also be used in cooking, but it doesn't thicken. Like most soluble fibers, it helps regulate your digestion and stabilize blood sugars. Benefiber contains only soluble fiber, so it's helpful for people trying to manage their blood sugar, like people with type 2 diabetes. And it contains less than 5 parts per million of gluten, so it meets the requirement to be labeled as gluten-free. A fourth product is Metamucil, which is psyllium. Psyllium is made from the seed husk of the Plantago ovado plant. Psyllium only contains 70% soluble fiber, but it helps to increase the fullness and slow digestion as well. It contains some insoluble fiber, so it passes through the gut relatively intact, providing more bulking and helping to keep your colon to move more regular. Psyllium, or Metamucil, can often be used to relieve painful symptoms associated with irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, hemorrhoids, or maybe even anal fissures. Metamucil also sells wafers that are cinnamon apple and chocolate. They have about 5 to 7 grams per serving, and they're really good tasting. You made it to the end. So this concludes the list of dietary items for fiber. If you haven't been eating a lot of foods with fiber on a daily basis, it's important that you increase your intake slowly. Even though fibers are good for you, it can take some time for your body to adjust. So a sudden increase in eating foods high in fiber, especially the foods with added fiber, or if you're using the supplements, they can cause gas, bloating, and constipation. So also make sure that you're drinking enough water because fiber needs water to move through your body. As it was shown in the carb counting series, some of the foods that are high in fiber also low in net digestible carbs, which means that the total carbs is actually subtracted from the amount of fiber. So it makes them a low-carb food, but not all fiber foods are low-carb. I have many delightful ways to consume fiber in my nutrition plans. If you decide to set up a nutritional consult, we can tailor it to your taste and your goals. Thank you for watching this webinar, and I hope that it's given you a more knowledgeable base on adding fiber into your diet.